fact, after dinner, before dinner, I walked in and my son's 11, and I said, "Hey, Christian, I'm so excited. I'm going to be on a podcast. My first time being a guest on a podcast tonight." He said, "I know, Dad, middle grade ninja. You talk about it all the time." I'm like, "Oh, I guess I have mentioned it before." So
I think that should be the start of the show. I'm way too self-aggrandizing not to make it the start.
that's fine. Whatever you
Goss,
want.
how are you this evening?
I'm doing great, Rob. Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for making the time this evening. I'm excited to talk to you because you're getting it done, man. I saw you published your first book in 2018. Now you're up to 7 books at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, actually 8. I have a young adult book as well, young adult paranormal urban fantasy. I'm at 8 books published, and my first book, The Timepiece, for the first in the middle grade fantasy series, that was published in November of 2018. So I've been trying to get the books out for sure.
So, I've got all kinds of questions for you about what you're doing with the books, what you're doing with YouTube, you're coming at us on all fronts.
Yeah.
That I don't do other people's biographies. So the best place to start is if you would give esteemed audience kind of an overview of your background thus far, and then we'll dig in.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So I live in Nashville, Tennessee, the Nashville, Tennessee area, and I'm married. I have 2 kids. I'm a homeschooled dad. My wife and I homeschool our kids. My son is 11. My daughter's 9. And we, a couple of years ago, our routine has always been to, read to our kids at night, like a lot of parents try to do. And it was my turn to put my son to bed, so we were going to read something, and he just was really burnt out on me reading to him. And he asked me, he said, "Dad, can we just make up a story together? Can you just tell me a story?" And I thought, yeah, sure, that'd be fun. And so we sat down and I just started telling him a story about a boy named Hoops who finds a magic timepiece. And every time he sets the hands of the pocket watch to a different hour, it takes him to a different fantasy world. And the first night I said, "Okay, so this is what happens in the 1 o'clock world." And I just made up a fantasy world. And half an hour later, his eyelids were getting droopy. And I said, "Okay, and that's all that happens in the 1 o'clock world. We'll do 2 o'clock tomorrow night." And he's like, "No, you got to do all 12 worlds tonight." I'm like, "It's 9:30. You should be asleep. We're not going to do that. Tomorrow night we'll do it." Excuse me. So the next night, he's like, "Dad, you got to put me to bed tonight. I want to hear what happens in the 2 o'clock world." So we made up more. And he threw in some ideas. "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if this happened?" I said, "Sure, that can happen in the story." So night 2 was all about the 2 o'clock world. Night 3 was about the 3 o'clock world, so to speak. And we get about a week and a half into this, and he's so enthralled with this story and so interested to know what's going to happen in the next world that he decided to pass on an invitation from his grandmother to come over to her house and play video games, because he doesn't play any video games here, but we allow him to do it over there. And so he said, "No, Mimi, I don't want to go over tonight. I want to hear what happens next in the story that Dad's telling me."
Well, hang on, for impressive purposes, at Mimi's house, is the video games, are we talking Atari, old school Nintendo? How good are we talking?
No, that's great. At the time, it was the Wii. Now it's the Nintendo Switch. But we're Nintendo fans, big time. And he was really into playing the Wii. And when he said, "I think I want to skip going to Mimi's and hear what's next in the story," my wife and I looked at each other like, 'cause that's a huge treat for him. She just, my mother-in-law lets our kids go hog wild. They can do whatever they want at Mimi's, as it should be with grandparents. But when he said that, my wife said, "I don't know what you're telling him at night when you're putting to bed, but I think you need to turn it into a book. I think other kids might enjoy it too." I was like, I've never done that before. I don't really know if I could write, a story. She's like, you're a writer. I write things, but I've never written a fiction before, and I've certainly had never published anything. She goes, "I think you really need to consider putting it, in book form and see what happens." And so I accepted the challenge, and it took about 8 months to get it written and figure out, who's going to edit it and what should I do for a cover and illustrations and all those things. And then finally in November, I hit publish and on the ebook and the paperback, and was thrilled that other homeschool moms and other homeschool kids wanted to hear what it was all about and read it, and it really took off. And by the time I got done writing the first book, I realized I couldn't let the story just end there, because there's a little bit of a cliffhanger at the end. And so I was so excited about the whole process, and really found that I loved writing fiction, especially for kids, that I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and try my hand at book 2 and 3. So I plotted out book 2 and 3 because I thought it'd probably be good to have at least 3 books in a series. That made sense. And now it's a 5-book series with 2 side stories and a prequel. And one of the side stories is in production right now. And it's been great. It's turned into it's just been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. And I had no idea I loved writing so much. And fortunately, that's kind of what's carried me through getting, 7 books in the series online.
Okay, so we've established that this is a series that is good enough to give up a night with Mima to go hog wild, and the good Nintendo games, not the garbage Atari. No, this is the premium stuff that's being sacrificed for. So, had you wanted to be an author prior to this? Had it always kind of been in the back of your mind, or was it just, nope, I'm having so much fun, let's do it now?
You know what? I never aspired to be a writer. I never aspired to be an author. I don't think ever in my life, even though my mom said, you're such a good writer. You're such a good writer. You should consider writing something. You should consider writing a book, writing a story. And I said, no, that's not for me. That's for like creative authors with ascots and pipes and, for people like, Dickens, who can like organize a whole story in their mind, and they just have the gift of dialogue. And I said, that's not really for me, but I appreciate the compliment.
This is episode, 106, 107? Not one ascot or one pipe. What am I doing wrong, Nick? Sorry.
You just have all these. I just had all these images of what an author should be and is, and I didn't know anything, and I still don't know much. I just, but I really, when I started doing it, I realized how much I loved telling a story, and I think a lot of that comes out in writing dialogue. And the only thing I had to go with was, I read a lot, but I watch a lot of movies too. And I love how a chapter correlates with a scene in a movie, where there's a very definite opening to the scene, a very specific event or sequence of events, and it usually ends with some sort of a cliffhanger or a tag that makes you want to, figure out what the next scene is going to be all about. And it made sense that, chapters for a kid's book could be organized the same way, so long as they're and it helps keep the chapters shorter too. I think some of the feedback from my son and some other homeschool kids was that the chapters were a little long, and I should try to shorten them a little bit to keep their interest. And that's straight from the horse's mouth. That's straight from the reader. And so I started doing that. I keep them around. I keep each chapter around about 1,000 words, maybe a little over, maybe a little under. But it's just manageable enough to keep their attention. And that's just good advice from kids, coming straight from kids.
I noticed the books are hitting right around, the paperbacks are hitting right around 115, 120 pages.
Yeah, they're all 5 books in the series are roughly around the 30,000 word mark. And then except for the little prequel I wrote, which is the backstory of the bad guy, how he becomes the bad guy. And that's around 20. And then the 2 side stories, one of them is 25,000 words, and then the one I'm in the middle of writing right now is probably going to be long. It's going to be around 40,000, maybe 45. I'm not sure. But I got to keep those chapters short. That's really important to keep. I think that's really important to keep kids' interest.